been greeting people coming in, someone said, "What a sad yet remarkable day." And I think those words will be echoed throughout our service today. I'm just going to do a very brief sound check. If you're at the back, can you just let me know if you can hear me okay? If you know, right, so let's raise my voice slightly. I didn't want to drown you out from the very beginning.
Helen, there's some seats people can move into.
Thank you. So anybody that's still stood up and needs a seat, we do have a few just down at the front here as well. Or if you've landed on one of the children's seats and you want to be a little bit higher perched, feel free to just make a move. So on this sad and yet remarkable occasion, we join together. We gather together in worship, and we gather to celebrate Stephen's life, to give thanks for the gifts and love that he shared with us, and we gather in remembrance of those who've gone before us. And we also acknowledge that one day we too will be mourned. But we gather to begin to say goodbye. Something of the life of Stephen are reflected in the words we shall be hearing and speaking throughout the service today. But for the memories that words cannot capture, there will also be times of silence. And so, as we gather together, let us pray. Spirit of God, source of all love within us and between us, as we come in sorrow to give thanks for the life of Stephen, comfort with gentleness all who are gathered here today. Thank you for the love that we can never be separated from. For although Stephen is gone from our sight, the love that he gave, the love that helped shape our lives, remains with us. And as the dark shadows of grief inevitably continue, may we have the courage to leave Stephen in your love and care. And may we also have the space and time to let the quietness come upon us and trust the strength of your embrace to enfold and support us as you hold all that is together in heaven and earth. Amen. So we give thanks to Margaret for playing for us today as she leads us in our first hymn, Great is Thy Faithfulness, O God my Father. Please stand. I'm going to invite Megan to come forward and lead us in our reading for today. From Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Amen. When I had the joy of visiting Stephen and Jean in their home soon after I arrived in the circuit, I was somewhat in awe of the many different seasons in life and the places God's call on your life and where that call had taken you. We are going to hear some of the joys of each season as family and friends share their stories and lives of the seasons with us. And not every season has been easy, But the thread that runs through the whole story in every chapter is the constancy of God, going ahead, preparing the way, walking alongside, weeping and rejoicing. And this next hymn the family have chosen affirms that firm anchor that we all have in God. Will your anchor hold in the storms of life? There's a good reason why I kept my words very short, because we are going to hear some of the wonderful seasons of Stephen's life with family and friends. We're going to begin with Francis and continue with Sally and a language of art and images and music. Continuing with Jane and some of the family footsteps or footprints. And then completing our first section of tributes with Andrew, speaking of Stephen's faith and his life in the church. And so in that order, they will progress without me coming up and down. So Francis, Sally's artwork, Jane, and Andrew. Thank you.
I wanted to tell a memory from my childhood, which I think captures a little bit of Dad's essence. A colleague of Dad's, Roger Wigham, who's here today, wrote to Mum recently that Dad could say in a sentence what most people would take half a page to convey, which is a handy skill when you have to write hundreds of school reports. Dad was often quiet and understated. He was never boastful or critical, and he was most always calm, patient, and kind. And this memory is one that's very strong for me, and it's been in my mind since the last days of Dad's life. I must have been about 10 or 11. My memory is not the most accurate in the family. That accolade must go to Sally. And we were on holiday in the Lake District. And this was quite unusual for us to go so far away. We were lucky enough to go on regular holidays with our friends, the Lowtons, who were also here. And we mostly went to Lockton in North Yorkshire. Our holidays consisted of hiking in all weathers, picnicking in all weathers, paddling in the Yorkshire streams, playing on the local farm, and swinging out over the valley on the rope swing on the common. These times instilled in us a love of nature and being outdoors that I think we all still share today. Anyway, back in the Lake District, John and Dad would go off sometimes on grown-up, serious hikes, leaving the women and children to gentler activities. On this particular day, they were going to climb Scafell Pike, which was the highest peak in England. And I asked if I could go with them. They agreed, and we set off. It felt a bit special to be going with the men, and I was probably a bit proud of myself. But not very far into the ascent, I soon realised that this type of walking wasn't easy, and I started moaning, complaining, and lagging behind. Why do you do this? What's the point? It just hurts my legs and feet, I whinged. And as I remember, Dad didn't tell me off. He didn't give me any long motivational speeches. He didn't get cross or frustrated. He didn't leave me far behind or make me feel bad. In fact, I don't remember him saying very much at all. Just quietly staying close to me and carrying on with the hike. Very gently letting me know that I could do it without saying hardly a word. I think I was quite a pain on that journey. But there was something Dad and John knew that I didn't know until we got to the top. And I remember that feeling very well. Suddenly everything opened up. We had made it. The frustrations and pain in my legs drained away. The view spread out before us, and we sat down at the top to survey the world below. I felt elated and deeply satisfied, and I remember saying, "I know why you do this now," with a big smile on my face. I remember that we jumped and almost ran down the mountain, dipping our feet and washing our faces in the cool streams on the way, and it all felt worth it. I'm very grateful for this experience to this day. Dad let me discover my own strength and patience, and because he didn't preempt the outcome, the joy I felt was all the more profound. Of course, this journey is an obvious metaphor for life. The way can be arduous at times, but with good, steady support, we can find our way and discover that we are capable of things we didn't know were possible. Thank you, Dad, for these qualities of gentleness, patience, courage, resilience, and joy.
Well, I'm really sorry, but I'm going to bring down the tone because my talk is about Dad's feet. Well, don't worry, it's not too bad. I want to speak more specifically about Dad's footprints, which he's left in the lives of all of those who knew him. Now, I don't know where you all stand on the great Crocs debate. They're like Marmite, and you either love the perforated plastic clogs or you hate them. I won't make you do a show of hands, but I will tell you that Dad actually loved them. And in recent years, when his feet became painful with rheumatism, they were his preferred form of house slippers. Now, if all the cards and messages that we've received since he died are anything to go by, people were not divided about Dad. He was widely respected and loved. Dad was a person who, instead of dividing people, united people from all walks of life and from all around the world. He never judged people. He always welcomed and supported them. Now, when I stayed at 227, but we actually call it 22 Heaven, with Mum after Dad died, I actually borrowed my dad's Crocs because I hadn't packed any slippers. And as well as walking literally in his shoes, I was thinking about walking in his shoes metaphorically. Now, Dad had quite small feet. They were only a size 7. But I think a few of you might agree that he left pretty giant-sized footprints in our lives. Now, I've read that to walk in the footsteps of giants, we must make ourselves small and humble. And we must rethink what really brings value into our lives. Dad was a humble man, and he had strong principles and a faith in God, in whose footsteps he tried to follow. Now, since he died, I've been reflecting on the paths each of his children and grandchildren have followed. He's led the way going before us, and due to his example, we've followed him. He never forced his passions or interests upon us, but he did open up opportunities, and he did lend us encouragement, support, and interest. So I hope each of you will be able to recognize his footprints in your life like a tree that scattered its seeds. You'll know where you each fit into this following list. And it isn't conclusive. By no means is it conclusive of all the different ways he led and we followed. So some followed his mathematical and scientific pathways. They're the brains of the family. And I bet there are a few of you in this room who he has tutored through their physics or maths exams. Some followed him into teaching. Others have taken up musical instruments or sung in choirs. Like him, lots of us enjoy swimming in the cold North Sea. And his passion for literature, poetry, writing letters, meticulous filing. Somebody's very good at that. Global travel, news, current affairs, the Labour Party, and the pursuit of social justice. And the list really does go on, but I am going to stop there. But throughout his life, the bedrock beneath Dad's feet was always his strong Christian faith, which motivated and empowered him to serve as a preacher and as a founding member of Open Doors, a welcome for refugees and asylum seekers at this church, and it also inspired his role in the management of Methodist International House in Hull. Now, lots of you will know that things weren't always easy. Many of you will know that Dad walked a path with depression during several seasons of his life, and it is a path some of us have walked or are still walking. But my mind turns to the story of the man who dreams his life as being a walk along the beach with Jesus. During the most difficult times of his life, the man sees that there is only one set of footprints in the sand. And the man asks God, "Why did you leave me when I was struggling the most?" And God says, "Those were the times I picked you up and carried you." And I firmly believe God is now holding Dad fast in his arms and has carried him to his final resting place, where there is no more pain and where there is everlasting peace. And I thank God for Dad. Thank you.
Wow, what a fantastic sight. If you're at the front, just turn around and have a look. It's amazing to see an absolutely full church. And if you promise that you'll all come back on Sunday, the church promises to buy more chairs. So, did you say 20 minutes I had, Jane?
No, I said more.
So, I've spent some time in the last month in the Advent season dressing up in my new stripy dressing gown and going out into the villages and into the churches and telling them about the coming Advent. Of course, I had a tea towel on my head at the same time. But as I did that, I was reminded about Stephen dressing up as a wise man. And Stephen and Peter Brough, and I know that Gillian and Alison are here, and Selwyn Clark, all dressed up as wise men, and sang the Christmas carol, "We Three Kings." And they took it very seriously, while we all howled in laughter. But I want to share three things, good Methodist note, three things with you about Stephen. And the first was that he really was a wise man. He was probably the wisest man that I knew. Not with worldly wisdom, but with a deep spiritual worldly wisdom, a wisdom of God, a wisdom of being a father and a grandfather and a man that spoke with love. He was always the person to ask for advice, to ask for help, to ask for support. And when Stephen and I would do things together, and sometimes people would ring me up and say, "What do you think about this?" And I would give an answer. And that would be people from the circuit, and Sue's here, and people from lots of churches, and people from International House. And after I'd given an answer, they would look at me, and Catherine at International House would do the same and say, "But what would Stephen do? What would Stephen do? What would Stephen think?" And that always made us think. And I think that's a good motto in life, you know, when we're in those difficult situations, to think about how Stephen would deal with that, because he was truly a wise man. He was also a very generous man, a man with an incredibly generous spirit. His family are looking at me confused now, because he was not an indulgent man, was he? And he was certainly not a self-indulgent man. We recently had a family away time together in a Mr. and Mrs. quiz into what